Okay, let's just jump right in. You're out, phone's nearly dead, you need juice. And you see that USB port, right? Airport, coffee shop, maybe the back of a seat. Plugging in feels totally normal, like second nature. But what if getting that power opens you up to something else entirely?
It's something we do all the time, and yeah, we trust it. Why wouldn't we? But the thing is, that cable, it's not just power. It was always designed for data, too. And that dual thing has always had this kind of hidden risk.
Right, and this isn't like a totally new fear. I remember maybe a decade back, people started talking about juice jacking.
Exactly, juice jacking. The idea was dodgy charging stations could use that data connection, either sneak malware onto your phone or just, quietly copy your stuff.
And the big fix from Android, from iOS, seemed pretty solid back then. They brought in those pop-ups, right, when you connect to a computer or whatever via USB.
Yeah, that prompt asking you, the user, hey, do you want to allow this data connection, photos, files, whatever? And everyone sort of figured, okay, if a bad charger can't make you click yes, then the danger's pretty much handled.
And honestly, for years, that felt right. Felt okay plugging into random ports thinking that prompt was our safety net.
Yeah.
But the sources we're digging into today, a research paper, stuff on hardware like the O.MG Cable, forum discussions, they show that safety net has holes.
Big holes. They're calling this new attack family choicejacking. It's a really clever way to get around that user consent prompt, often completely silently.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. How does this work? What are the tools? What are the real risks? And is there anything we can even do? Because this matters, right? Your phone. It's got everything. Banking, photos, messages, your whole digital life.
Okay, so let's start with the core issue the researchers found. That old juice jacking fix, the user prompt one. It rested on an assumption. The assumption was basically that a malicious charger acting as a USB host, like a computer wanting data, couldn't also sneak in fake clicks or taps to approve the very prompt it just triggered.
Which sounds logical, I guess. USB usually has clear roles. You're either the host or the device, not both.
But that's where the system-level view on mobiles gets tricky. Choicejacking's main insight is that, yes, malicious hardware can actually manipulate things. It can exploit quirks in the USB system, timing issues to sort of blend roles. It tries to get data access and acts like a keyboard or mouse to fake the user's okay.
So it's not just one thing or the other. It's this hybrid attack, trying to be two things at once, or maybe one right after the other really fast.
Exactly. The paper has a figure 2, that shows it nicely. 4 steps. First, you plug your phone into the bad charger.
Okay, power starts flowing, normal stuff.
Right. But secretly, the charger also sets up this extra channel, like a hidden pathway just for sending input commands, separate from the main data thing initially.
Got it. A secret remote control link. Then what?
Then the charger makes its move to act as a USB host. It requests data access. And that's what makes the usual prompt pop up on your screen, allow access or trust this computer.
The thing you're supposed to see and decide on.
Yes. But here's the final step, the core trick. Using that hidden input channel, it already opened. It fakes your input, a tap maybe. It just automatically clicks yes on the prompt, potentially before you even properly see it. It accepts for you.
Wow. That's incredibly sneaky. It uses the protection mechanism against itself by pretending to be you.
That's choicejacking in a nutshell. And the researchers found 3 specific ways, 3 techniques that attackers can use to actually do this.
Okay, let's get into the weeds. How do they actually manage that? What's the first technique?
Technique 1, they call it T1. This one abuses parts of the Android Open Accessory Protocol, or AOAP. AOAP lets accessories talk to Android, maybe send input. The key finding is that lots of devices will accept these AOAP input messages, even when they're not in the special accessory mode that's supposed to limit data.
What does that mean?
Because it lets a malicious charger act like a host, triggering the data prompt, and at the same time, using AOAP, register itself as an input device, like a keyboard, a HID device, without needing your permission for the input part first. Once it has that input channel, bam, it just sends the tap to approve its own data requests.
So it uses this other protocol path to sneak in the keyboard ability, and you said it's fast.
Scary fast. This was the fastest one they found. On one phone, it took only 133 milliseconds. The median was 334 milliseconds. I mean, a human blink is what, 300, 400 milliseconds? You might see a tiny screen flash, if that.
Wow. Faster than you can even think about reacting. Did it work on many phones?
All the Android devices they tested. Every single one. And worse, on some phones, Oppo, Honor It could get file access even if the screen was locked. On Xiaomi devices, it could even turn on developer settings and get ADB access, basically deep system control, even if you never enabled it yourself. It just faked all the necessary taps in the settings.
Okay, T1 hits all Androids, lightning fast, sometimes bypasses the lock screen, sometimes gets root-like access. What about Technique 2?
T2 exploits what's called a race condition in Android's input system, how it handles taps and swipes. The charger starts as a normal USB peripheral, something Android trusts more easily. It uses that trust to just flood the phone's input system with a bunch of pre-planned fake tap events.
Like queuing up a load of clicks really fast.
Exactly. While the phone is busy trying to process that sudden flood of input, the charger quickly switches its USB role to host. That switch triggers the data permission prompt. But because the phone is still working through the backlog of fake taps, those taps eventually get processed and they land right on the allow button of the prompt that just appeared.
Huh. So it kind of sends the yes click before the question is fully on screen and ready.
Pretty much, yeah. It's banking on that processing delay. This one worked on 9 out of 10 Androids for file access and 6 out of 10 for the deeper ADB access.
Still pretty effective. Is it as fast as T1?
No, definitely slower. All that flooding and switching takes time. The median was about 13 seconds. Still potentially unseen if you plug in and look away, but not that instant T1 hit.
Okay, T1 exploits protocol, T2 exploits timing. What's Technique 3, T3?
T3 brings Bluetooth into the mix. It's quite clever. The charger plugs in via USB, acts like a peripheral initially, and uses that trusted connection to force the phone to pair with a Bluetooth input device like a keyboard that's actually built into the charger itself.
Hold on, the charging cable is also a secret Bluetooth keyboard.
Yep, a hybrid device. So it forces the pairing, maybe exploiting the USB trust, once that Bluetooth link is live. The charger switches its USB role to host, which, again, triggers the data consent prompt. But now, it uses the already established Bluetooth connection to wirelessly send the tap needed to accept that prompt.
That sounds more involved. Does the Bluetooth part slow it down?
It does. T3 was the slowest, median time around 24.5 seconds, mainly because Bluetooth pairing isn't instant. But, and this is a big but, T3 worked on both Android and iOS devices they tested.
Ah, so Apple devices aren't totally safe from this kind of prompt bypass, at least not from this Bluetooth method.
According to this research, no. T3 hit 10 out of 11 devices across both platforms. It's just a different pathway to achieve the same result, getting past user consent.
It's really something how they found these different weaknesses,
Yeah.
exploiting protocols, timing, even Bluetooth pairing, all poking holes in that security model we trusted.
And it's not just lab experiments. The sources also talk about actual hardware out there, stuff designed for exactly this kind of thing.
Which brings us to tools like the O.MG Cable. That's been making waves in security circles, right? And it's mentioned in our sources.
Absolutely. The O.MG cable is, well, it's the physical manifestation of this threat. Looks just like your average Apple Lightning or USB-C cable. White, black, totally normal. But hidden inside the connector casing is a tiny computer. Microcontroller, Wi-Fi module, the works.
And what does it do?
It's programmable. Its main job is to pretend to be a USB human interface device, a HID, so a keyboard and mouse. And operating systems, generally speaking, trust HIDs. They let them connect and provide input, often without any special permissions or prompts.
And because it looks normal?
Yeah.
Wow, you could leave one lying around plugged into a public charger, swap it for someone's real cable. Nobody would know.
Exactly. And it's not just simple taps. It can store complex scripts, payloads. It can be controlled remotely over Wi-Fi. An attacker could be sitting in a car nearby, triggering commands after you plug it in. And crucially, it makes the connected device, phone or computer, think a person is typing or clicking.
So these cables, they're not just for the choice-jacking prompt bypass. They're like these stealthy, remote-controlled fingers for any device.
Which leads to this really disturbing angle that one source highlighted, the forensic nightmare, the blame game.
Right, let's talk impact. What can attackers get if they bypass the prompt with choice-jacking or use an O.MG cable on a computer?
Well, the choice-jacking paper shows file access is common via MTPTP. That's your photos, videos, documents. On Android, as we said, often ADB access too. That means installing apps, stealing way more data, maybe full device control. On iOS, it's usually limited to photo-video access unless the device is jailbroken, but still significant.
Okay, data theft, malware, standard cyber risks.
Yeah.
But you mentioned a forensic problem.
Yeah, this is from the source discussing O.MG cable tests on computers. It's chilling. When that malicious cable runs a script, say, to modify a sensitive file, it does it through the OS using the account of whoever is logged in at the time.
Wait, so the computer logs the files last modified by info? It all points to the actual user.
Yep, precisely. To standard forensic tools, it looks exactly like the legitimate user performed the action. The metadata says they did it.
That's awful. Is there any trace of the cable?
Yes, but it's indirect. The O.MG cable shows up in the system's device registry often as multiple strange USB devices, sometimes weird names, weird IDs like VIDD, PIDD340, maybe a weird serial number like 999.
So a deep dive into registry logs might show this odd device was connected around the time the file was changed.
Might, if the investigator knows what to look for, these weird HID registrations. But here's the kicker from the source. Standard forensic processes don't link that registry evidence of the device directly to the file modification event. There's no automatic digital trail saying this weird USB device caused this file change. The file points to the user, full stop.
My God, so someone could use this cable to frame an innocent person, plant evidence, modify records, and the digital breadcrumbs lead right back to the victim.
That's the implication. Job loss, false accusations, potentially even wrongful convictions. It's a huge problem if investigators aren't aware these devices exist and how they operate under the radar.
It's not just about stealing data anymore. It's about potentially destroying lives by manipulating digital evidence.
And for these attacks, especially T2 and T3, which take a bit longer, stealth is key. They need to happen when you're not watching your screen.
How do they know when it's safe?
Another really smart bit from the research, they can use the power line itself, a power line side channel, or PLSC. While it's charging you, the malicious charger can subtly monitor the tiny changes in how much current your phone is drawing.
Seriously. They can tell what my phone is doing just by how much power it's using.
To a surprising degree, yes. The research paper has graphs, figure 6. They show distinct power signatures for different states, like screen locked versus unlocked, or even when the screen goes dark because you're on a phone call, holding it to your ear.
So they're basically spying on your phone's activity through the charging cable.
In a way, yes. It lets the charger wait. Wait for a moment, you're likely distracted. Maybe you plugged in at a cafe and took a call. Or you're using GPS in the car, screen dimmed. Or you just walked away for a second. They can time the attack, that prompt bypass, for when you're least likely to notice that brief flicker or interaction.
That makes even the 13 or 24-second attacks seem way more viable in the real world. Okay, this feels like a pretty big gap. What defenses do we have? Are they any good against this?
Well, we've got some things, but the research shows they're not really cutting it against choice jacking. You mentioned USB data blockers earlier, those USB condoms.
Yeah, the little dongles that only let power through.
They do work, physically severing the data lines. So yeah, effective against data-based attacks, but you have to remember to use one. Every single time. With untrusted ports or cables. And sometimes they mess with fast charging, because power negotiation often uses those data pins too.
Right, effective if you're diligent, but requires user action and might slow things down. What about software defenses? OS protections?
Okay, so operating systems do ask for your PI or fingerprint for really sensitive stuff, like turning on USB debugging. That's good. But the paper points out, often the prompt is just enter PIN. It doesn't say why. So an attacker could trigger that prompt, then just wait for you to unlock your phone for some other reason, and boom, they get what they wanted.
Exploiting our habit of just unlocking when prompted, without always checking the context.
Exactly. Then there's lockdown mode. Newer Android and iOS have it. If you turn it on, it can disable USB data when the phone's locked. Great for, say, going through customs or if you're worried about seizure.
But a lot of these attacks seem to work when the phone is unlocked, or you just unlocked it.
That's the limitation. Lockdown mode helps in specific lockdown scenarios, but doesn't stop attacks when you're actively using the phone or just plugged it in unlocked, and you have to manually enable it. None of these existing things really stop that initial malicious input channel setup or the race conditions or the AOAP misuse that choice jacking relies on.
So what do the researchers suggest? What's the real fix?
Their main proposal is more fundamental, they say. Don't just ask for user consent for data connections to a host. Require explicit user permission for any USB connection that wants input capabilities. That includes accessory modes, peripheral modes that act like keyboards.
So stop trusting any device to act like a keyboard or mouse right off the bat without asking the user first.
Precisely. Lock that initial foothold. Prevent the attacker from getting that sneaky input channel open or from flooding the input queue without needing a clear, yes, I allow this device to act as an input from the user. That prompt is much harder for them to bypass automatically.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Are the companies, Google, Apple, listening?
Seems like it. The researchers did responsible disclosure, told the vendors, and we're seeing some movement. Google fixed that locked screen access issue for some vendors in the November 2024 Android Security Bulletin. Samsung's apparently made some improvements. Apple added authentication for USB connections if the phone's been locked for an hour in iOS 17.5, and more fixes are apparently coming.
Okay, so steps are being taken, but it's maybe not a fully solved problem everywhere just yet.
Not uniformly, no. It's a tricky architectural challenge. Getting robust, consistent fixes rolled out across the vast ecosystem of devices will likely take time.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, it's really clear that plugging in your phone isn't just about power anymore. Not by a long shot. USB ports, the cables themselves, they can be attack vectors for really sophisticated stuff like choice jacking.
Yeah, attacks designed specifically to get around the very protections we've relied on for a decade against things like juice jacking.
And it's widespread. Remember, the research found all the tested devices were vulnerable somehow. Major brands, both Android and iOS.
And it can be incredibly fast, faster than a blink, or timed cleverly using power analysis to hit you when you're distracted. Hard to spot.
Plus that really scary consequence. Not just data theft, but the potential for malicious acts done via these devices, like the O.MG Cable, being blamed on the innocent user.
So for you listening, the main takeaway has to be vigilance. Think twice about where and how you charge, especially in public. Maybe carry your own power bank. Or get a charge-only cable, one you know only has power pins connected for those situations.
It's a small change, maybe carrying an extra gadget, but it seems like a pretty solid defense layer right now.
Absolutely. This whole investigation really makes you stop and consider, the trust we place in everyday tech.
Yeah, and it leaves you wondering just how much complexity and how many potential risks are hiding just beneath the surface of these simple things we use constantly, like a charging cable.
Always more layers to peel back.
Indeed there are.